everyone, welcome back to Rolling Solo. My name is Adam Smith, and today we continue the playthrough of Massive Darkness 2 in this one-shot scenario, the Demon Artifact. We're going to pick it up exactly where we left it off in the last video. If you haven't checked out any of the prior videos inside the showcase, I'll put a link to all of them in the top right-hand corner. There's a number of things I want to go over before we continue into the gameplay. Let's cover those off, and then we'll head into the depths of the dungeon and see how many shards we can collect in this video. One clarification around the rogue I want to make is every single time you activate the rogue, you always get 3 tokens out of the bag, which represent the 3 actions that you can take. And of course, you're trying to pair them up, the token and the action you take, in order to make the most use of those tokens, but you won't always be able to. When you do gain additional tokens from the rogue bag, the important thing to remember is you also gain an additional action as well. This happened one time in part number 1, where I ended up with 4 tokens in a given activation, which would have meant I had 4 actions to spend with the rogue. I missed out taking advantage of that 4th action. Don't forget this. It's one of the key elements and very cool benefits of using the rogue. Something else that I didn't do, which I've done now, is to place the 2 treasure tokens, which are stated right on the ghoul's card, out of the treasure bag and onto the card itself. They ended up both being common, but at the very end of the last video, I didn't have any treasure tokens placed on the ghoul. The final FYI, which I have to make mention of inside the Demon Artifact quest, is the fact I'm controlling 2 characters. Keep that in mind. Looking at the spawns that you have to actually place out on the setup, which I have all 3 of them in play, you'll notice in the smallest humanly possible writing you could ever imagine, there are numbers in there. And it says right here 3+ and 5+, meaning the number of characters or heroes inside the game. Currently I only have 2, which would mean the only spawn zone that should be placed is the purple one. We would have no green spawn here and no green spawn there. We currently have both those green spawns in play. The good news is we have not hit the spot on the darkness track to actually bring in mobs at those locations. We literally caught this just before we were about to move into that in the very near future. So both of those tokens will be removed. I'll be putting an FYI inside of the setup video as well as part number 1 to let people know, be careful. If you're playing with just 2 characters, don't make the game harder on yourself. But I guess another way to spin that is, if you're finding Massive Darkness too easy, then you could potentially add those additional spawns in and tinker with that, because that increase of number of mobs coming into the fray would certainly make for a more challenging dungeon. So the 2 green spawns here and on the far right hand side, both of those are going to be removed right now. And just like that, we are all squared away and ready to continue our adventure. One thing I need to make mention of is the fact that at the very end of the last video, I threw it back to the community in the comments and asked you all, should we keep the party together and head in a particular direction toward one of the colorless shards? So it could be either the one over here to the west, it could be the one over here to the east, or maybe even up north, or should we split the party? And the overwhelming majority said we should keep the party together, which I do believe is the smart choice, mainly because Mathrin, our wizard here, is not at the current amazing level that Faye is with all of her rare gear. So if we stick together, maybe going after the first shard, then after that, maybe at the very end, we can split the party up, going in 2 different directions to grab the final 2 shards, and hopefully they'll be further along in terms of their gear and more able to basically break themselves up and run away from each other. Now my goal here is going to be to try to get the party heading west. So you can see we do have some undead coming through the corridor there. We have a healing well right here. We have a couple doors to crack open if we wish to go into them, which house treasures, the ability to use a forge, the ability to potentially find some pretty cool loot in there. And then of course we have some spike traps to deal with and some other stuff. We also have a really nasty roaming monster that is hunting us down up there in the north, slowly making its way towards us. But thanks to the ability I picked up on Faye in the prior video, I have the ability to place traps, and when I activate Faye, you're going to see me being able to make use of that, and I'm going to try to use that to my advantage to put some additional damage on the ghoul before it ever reaches us. At least that's my hope. As part of the hero phase, I'm going to activate Mathrin first, the wizard, and he is going to use his first action to move 2 to get into the same space as Faye. So Mathrin makes the aggressive move into position near the undead and does have the ability to use his wooden staff for his magical attack 1 space away. He is certainly going to make some attacks here against the undead. Matherin's going to take his second action using an attack spell because he will be using this Fire Course 1 ability. For 2 mana, I get a +2 sword going in. Defender's going to take 1 condition of fire on the mob card itself, which I'll place in a moment. We obviously got our wooden staff here, allowing for the magical attack for 1 yellow die. We are in the shadows, so we get the purple die as well. So these are the 2 dice I have going into the attack, plus I have the 2 swords on top of it. The undead, as we know, don't have any defensive dice whatsoever, which is a plus. That fire condition will go on top of the mob card. And we're going to go ahead and roll some dice. There is 1 black die in the fray because there's 1 minion, but the leader doesn't have anything. So that's pretty good. We should be able to chew through these guys, I hope. Here we go with the roll. We got ourselves, oh, that's a pretty nasty one, actually. Now, this shadow ability here says use any attack spell on the amulet for free and do not rotate the marker. Now, the first thing we'll do is we'll resolve this black die here. So the hand symbol actually does nothing on the defensive, so nothing there. But that 1 scratch is going to do 1 damage through. We have no defense there, so that is going to be a hit towards us. And then we're going to have 2 swords plus the 2 swords from our attack spell, so it's a total of 4. And these undead are actually 4 health each, so that is enough to kill off the minion. Killing off the minion is going to give Matherin 1 XP, so that's good news. The other thing we also get, because we use the wooden staff, is 1 mana back. As you can see, when we attack, we get +1 mana. We also have a shadow icon rolled here, so it says use any attack spell on the amulet for free. Do not rotate the marker. So the marker is already rotated from this south position over here to the west position because we use the Fire Course 1. Now, right now, we can take any action, or I should say anything on this amulet for free. So in other words, we don't pay the cost. Now, what gets interesting here is the Dark Magic one says you have to pay 1 mana as its cost, but you also take 2 wounds. So the question in my mind is, does it stop you from taking the wounds? I don't think so. I think that the actual cost of mana is really what that is driving towards. You don't have to pay the mana because you are in the shadows. That's the thematic thing there. I don't believe it's, oh, you don't have to pay the mana and you also don't have to take the wounds and then you get the benefit of Dark Magic on top of it. I think you just saved the 1 mana. Now, the other thing I'm thinking of doing here is I could take advantage of this. Because, again, remember, I don't have to rotate the marker. I'm just picking something to do for free here. So I could do a heal 3, and not really advantageous for Matherin. He's at 4. He's got a current maximum health of 4 plus 1 at level 2 of 5. So only 1 heal there. Not really worth it. But he's in the same space as Faye, who has a maximum health of 6 and is currently at 4. So could be beneficial to do that heal right now. And if I do that heal, the benefit there is I don't have to use the well that I'm about to run into in a moment. I could keep that well for later on. We could check it out later when we really need it as a real quick way to heal. So I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to take advantage of the heal 3 and we're going to get Faye back up to full health. For the last action, we're going to go ahead and do another attack here. So we're going to be getting a yellow die for the wooden staff. I'm going to spend a mana this time instead of using it for this spell amulet boost here. I'm going to use it over here for the steel gauntlets to get an additional yellow die because, well, it can generate mana for me and it could also generate swords. So I've got 2 yellow dice going into fray, plus I am in darkness, so I still get that purple die. And now we just have the leader who has literally no defense, so it's just a rolling of these 3 dice. Now, if everything goes well for Matherin here, we are going to wipe this thing out. Remember, we still have the conditional fire token that will activate later on when the undead activate if they're still around to do it. So that might be the last hit we need to kill it off. So at best here, we're really hoping to get 3 damage so we can put it on the edge of death, hopefully. And wow, look what we got here. 3 plus 2 mana. That, I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. So it's going to be 3 damage. We'll be able to roll for the fire token when they do activate in the future. And if we get lucky, it will kill that leader before it even gets a chance to activate. That mob will be dead. Just like that, 3 damage on the condition token as I mentioned. That's going to do it for Matherin's turn. Currently happy with that. We're going to now activate Phaedra by drawing 3 tokens. The only token left for the rogue is this additional yellow die right here. So at this point, because there's no more tokens in the bag, we take all the discarded tokens, place them back into the bag, give them a good shake so we have no idea what's going on there. Reach in, we're going to grab 2 more. We got ourselves this one here. So this is a move up to 2 and then attack. And the third one here is a +1 movement point. Something worth mentioning on the rogue, I want to correct now, is just placement of where I put a particular item. You'll notice that the heavy gauntlets, I placed them up here in the hand slot, which is actually the incorrect spot. As you can see, it's a hand slot. It is not this slot right here. This is down here, so it actually should be sitting here. Don't forget about things like that. Put them in the right slots. Doesn't affect me really because at the end of the day, I have a longbow equipped anyway, which is a dual-handed weapon. So this is actually a space I can't use anyway. I just placed it in the wrong spot. I believe I did that at the very end of part number 1, but now that we're activating the rogue, it made sense to mention that as something to keep an eye on. At the end of part number 1, I got a skill that's really cool. This one's called the Toolkit 1. It says at the start of your turn, you may add a random face-up spike trap to a zone in range of 0 to 2, if possible. This trap only affects enemies. The trap damage is ×2, so it's even worse for the enemy. And then you have the ability to take an action using this skill, which again costs one of the 3 actions that you have available, to move yourself to a trap up to one zone away and remove it without suffering its effect. You'll remember there is a trap outside of the demonic chamber on the west-hand side of the game board that we're heading towards, so that will really come in handy later on too. So I'm pretty sure you know exactly what I plan to do here, and that is to place a spike trap at the beginning of the turn right now, right at the corner location where the roaming monster is heading down south. It will be 2 spaces away from Faye and land right here. That's an extremely cool ability, especially when you have a roaming monster that is continuing to chase you throughout the dungeon. So that is now done. We're going to go ahead and activate Faye. We have a decision to make because we do have the leader of the undead staring at us right in the face. We can either run right past that undead leader, and whenever you would run past them using movement, you basically, when you leave a space with enemies, you pay 1 wound, or you get 1 wound as like retaliation damage for running past them. But thankfully there's only 1 enemy there, so it's only 1 wound. If there was like 3, you'd be taking 3 wounds, so it makes it much tougher to run away from a full mob. And of course, if you're playing at higher player counts or higher number of characters, that becomes exponentially tougher. So I'm going to have Faye go ahead and use her first action to move. She'll use this token here to gain +1, so she's got 3 total. She's going to go from this location into here, and crack this door open. Of course, once she moves into here and then out of this location with an enemy, she's going to take 1 wound for the 1 miniature there. So Faye has taken a wound and has gone down from 6 health to 5, and we've cracked the door open. So the first thing we do is draw a door card. We found a light chamber. This says move the darkness marker back 1 space if possible without applying darkness track effects. Repeat any darkness track effect once it advances though in the darkness phase. So in other words, you move back by 1 and don't complete any effect by moving back to that space. But then later in the darkness phase, when you normally move forward, you would go ahead and do that darkness effect. Now you'll see why this is nasty. Well, at least it has the potential to be nasty. In my case, it's actually okay, because moving this darkness marker back by 1 actually puts it here. And again, we don't activate this roaming monster again right now. And then when the darkness phase comes around at the end of this round, we'll move this token forward, putting another rare token in the bag. But if you're on the wrong spot, in other words, if you're already on a roaming monster spot or on a mob spawn, and you move the token back 1, later on when you go back to the darkness phase, you are now going to be pushing yourself into more mobs or more roaming monsters. So really, timing is everything on that card. There's no mob token inside the chamber, so no mob popping up in front of us, and you can see the treasure token there needs to be changed out for a treasure token from the bag. And we ended up with a common treasure in there. Now, just before we continue with Faye's turn, 2 actions left. I want to make mention of the fact I just caught that Matherin should actually have 3 mana, as at the very end of his turn when he got the purple die landed on 2 mana, but he also gains 1 from the wooden staff itself when he makes an attack. That was the one I forgot to add to his pool, so he actually has 3. Faye's second action is going to be to move. Unfortunately, we're going to be burning a token that doesn't jive, as they both have to do with attacking. So we're going to choose to go ahead and maybe take this one here for the +1 die. We'll flip it over. We're going to be moving into the space, and we'll have 1 additional action, or 1 additional movement point, I should say, to use. We could choose to go to the forge, or we could check out that common treasure. Faye wants to interact with the forge because the ability to gain a rare card from the 3 common level treasure that is being cashed in right now sounds much better than looking at just the common treasure in the room on the ground. So the forge, when you interact with it, heroes obviously interact with the forge using the movement point spend of 1, and you perform a single craft in the forge. You discard 3 item cards, then draw 1 item card 1 tier higher than that of the lowest tier of the discarded cards. So common, common, then to rare, then to epic in terms of those tiers. So for example, if a hero discards 1 epic and 2 rare cards, they then draw an epic card. For forge purposes, starting items and consumables are considered common. Heroes can spend multiple movement points in one action to craft multiple items. The 3 common items, the skeleton blade, the stone knuckles, and the ring blade, are all forged together in order to create the ring mace. This is a one-handed weapon with an attack ability of using 1 mana to kill 1 defending minion. That sounds extremely awesome, and guarantees yourself 1 orange die when making attacks. Faye is going to use her 3rd action, and again, using something that actually pairs with an attack, so completely useless in this case, flipping it over. We're going to get 2 movement points, and 1 movement point will be spent to check out the common item here. The other will be used to leave the room. The common treasure ended up being a magic-based item. This has a magic attack with 1 orange die and a 1 reroll ability when doing an attack. Pretty cool one-handed weapon that could be certainly handy for Mathrin to free up another hand. His current staff takes up both of his hands. This only takes up 1, and then he'd be able to have another one free. Now, this is going to be going towards Faye's inventory, but there's nothing stopping us from potentially trading in the future. A great one for Mathrin down the line. Now, the one thing I want to mention here is anytime you interact with any treasure token in the dungeon, like that common one I just did, make sure it goes back into the treasure bag. Now, one of the major reasons that I have Faye using the last movement point to get out of the room and into the hallway is I have that action on my toolkit, 1 skill for Faye, that next time she activates, she'll be able to actually have an action available, and if she's within 1 space of a trap, she can move into the space with the trap and disarm it for free without taking any effect. So I've got her positioned to do so the next time she activates. So everything is perfectly laid out, and hopefully, if we get really lucky here as we move through the rest of the round, that undead leader is going to die as a result of the fire condition, and we'll have no enemies over there. So at this point, we are going to go ahead into the enemy phase, and we're going to activate our enemies. The roaming monster is not within 3 spaces to be able to pounce on any hero, thank goodness. So it's just going to move like a regular mob, which will be 2 spaces towards the heroes. So it's on its way and it's coming around the bend, but it's still out of reach and also hasn't tripped up on that spike trap, which is just to the south of it, which will be fun to see how that triggers and what comes out of it later on. And hopefully something good comes of it, because I know some of the spike traps can actually be nothing. So here's hoping there's some actual damage on that one. The undead at this point is going to trigger, so we simply take a yellow die for every single fire condition token on the mob card and roll. If we see a single sword, this thing is dead because it has 3 hits already and only needs 4 to be killed. So here's hoping Mathrin puts the final hit on this enemy, and does. With a single sword, that thing is out of here. That worked out awesome. So 1 XP for the kill of the miniature, and then 2 additional XP because it was a leader, jumping up to 6. And then of course Faye also gets 2 XP because the leader died. So Faye will jump from 3 up to 5. I've also gone ahead and done some cleanup, because at the end of the hero phase, these should have all been in the discarded pile and the activation token should have been flipped over. We're inside the enemy phase, of course. Mathrin cashed in some pretty cool loot on the killing of the undead mob, got the crossbow they were carrying, and then from the actual common treasure deck, got a Thieves' Hood, which says right here, Shadow Attack +1 sword. So if we're in Shadow, we're going to get an additional sword going into every attack. That's pretty cool. For now, I'm going to stick with the wooden staff, even though technically the crossbow has some pretty cool abilities to be able to shoot from range long distance beyond just 1 space, like a typical magic attack item like this. And even though the other one is just a one-handed item, the crossbow is just a one-handed item, the wooden staff is going to remain mainly because it generates additional mana for Mathrin, which I do like to see. And then, of course, obviously the Thieves' Hood is going to get slotted in there because that gives him an instant benefit. I'm going to be trying to trade with Faye in the future to get that spell book. The level up phase this time around, really simplistic because, well, nobody can afford to level up. No one has 10 XP. We skip past that. Moving into the darkness phase, we're simply just moving the track back up again, activating the rare token, which we'll grab from the supply and drop inside of the treasure bag. Activation markers are back up and we can start a brand new round. So at this point, I'm going to have Faye go first. Our rogue ends up with these 3 tokens to use in this upcoming turn, which looks pretty good, seeing as I'd like to try to get inside that demonic chamber and get the shard. The very first action I'm going to take is that action on the toolkit card for Faye, which allows me to move myself to a trap up to 1 zone away and remove it without suffering its effect. And that's really good news because it would have been 1 wound, which we just avoided. The token I'm pairing with that action is another movement point boost, which is enough to crack open the demonic door. Now this is an interesting one. It says enemy plan, spawn one mob on any portal players get to choose, and then remove one mob spawn token from this chamber if possible. And there is one. So essentially the enemy plans almost have let me into the room as if they had some backdoor way of running around to the opposite side of the dungeon, like they want me to come in here and take this shard. We just resolved the door card and the mob token got taken out, so we have no mob token to resolve, although we will resolve one in a second in another portal. I'll finish going through the rest of the door steps for now. The next thing we look for is converting any treasure tokens from the treasure bag. We got one of them in there. So there is a common treasure in there now, and we'll go ahead and spawn that mob and choose which spawn we want to place that. Now we're playing with just 2 characters. You'll remember we only have 1 spawn token in play. So because of this, there's only 1 selection we can make. So it's coming from the purple spawn up top north. The enemy mob spawning up north is fire entities coming in with a rare treasure token and an undead sword attached to the leader. Just like that, the chamber up to the north is looking a little bit more busy. Faye's second action will be to move, so basically burning this token here. We definitely don't need any more attack tokens, seeing as the mob ran to the north side of the dungeon. So we moved in for 1 movement point. The other movement point will be able to pick up this shard objective for 5 XP going to Faye. So Faye is going to jump from 5 XP all the way up to 10 XP, which is really good because that means the next level of Faye's, she is going to be able to level up to level 3, making things a little bit more dangerous in the dungeon. Final action is going to be to do another move, and that's going to give her 2 more movement points. 1, she's going to check out the common treasure in the room, and it appears that she has found a sprint potion. This actually sounds really cool. Immediately move up to 2 zones. Pretty good in a situation where maybe a roaming monster is barreling down on you or you want to get somewhere really fast. So that could be really handy. We'll place that in her inventory, and that is really going to do it. We only have 1 more movement point left, so we'll just walk out the door. That'll do it for Faye. Her activation marker has been flipped over. Let's activate Mathrin next. Mathrin's going to activate right now. He's going to use his first action to get 2 movement points and head right to this space right here. Then take a second action to do movement, cracking open the door, and we'll have 1 remaining movement point to get into the room afterwards. Mathrin cracks open the door. We check a door card and it says the Whetstone Room. The active hero may keep this card until the end of the quest and discard it when attacking to gain +1 orange die. That'll definitely come in handy. With the final action for Mathrin, he is going to get 2 movement points, 1 to interact with this large chest here, and another to interact with the common treasure behind him, hopefully finding a whole bunch of good stuff. Cracking open the treasure, Mathrin reveals 2 common treasures in there. A bone crusher with an attack reroll and an orange attack die attached. It's a double-handed weapon. Probably going to stick with the wooden staff still, really hoping to do a trade for the magic book that Faye is carrying. So this one's not as exciting for me right now. It's not the one I'm really going after, but this is actually pretty good. The monk's robe here has a defense. You gain an additional mana from it with 1 defensive die. Taking a look at what Mathrin currently has, the still carrying around the battered leather armor, which is just a blue die. So really the bonus here is this actually generates some mana when he's defending. So now he's going to generate mana on the attack with the wooden staff and also on the defensive because of these robes. We're definitely going to put those on him right now. So Mathrin will see a nice little boost to his armor as he now equips the monk's robe. He then turns around and interacts with the common treasure in the room and finds a rugged kilt. This could be handy. A wizard with a kilt sounds pretty dangerous. This is a combat here with a 1 mana spend in order to gain 2 rerolls. That's nice because I have absolutely nothing in that slot currently. So that ended up being a very worthwhile chamber to explore for Mathrin. He didn't get the kind of rarity levels that Faye got, but still got to slot in a lot of helpful cards, even at the common level. That should really help him out. Now going into the enemy phase, we're going to go ahead and activate our mobs. So we have some of those fire entities. They're going to move 2 spaces forward. The roaming monster is now going to activate moving 2 spaces forward as there is nobody within 3 spaces and no mob present in its space, so it can't trigger any of its current major abilities. So it is going to walk straight into that spike trap and reveal it. The ghoul walks right into the spike trap and ends up being 2 wounds, but based on the toolkit card for Faye, it's ×2 for the damage going against this enemy. It'll be 4 wounds, which is awesome because this thing has a total of 10 health. So we almost knocked half of its health off with 1 spike trap. With the 4 damage now on the roaming monster, the thing continues to move 1 more additional space closer to us. The level up phase kicks in right now, and Faye is ready to cash in 10 XP, so we're going to go ahead and drop down to 0. We're going to bump ourselves up to 3, which means Faye now gains an additional health, jumping from 5 to 6, which is great to see. Also gains an additional mana on top of it, because as you can see for level 3, it's not only the health going up by 1, but it's also the maximum mana as well. So now her overall maximums are 5 here, plus 1, plus another health in terms of total health could be up to 7 at the highest. For mana, it's going to be 4, so we're going to be placing a new mana in here because she gained it as part of the level up. And then one of the treasure tokens, the epic treasure tokens that she has right here, is going to go into the treasure bag. Now just off screen here, I've gained the mana thanks to the level up. I want to show you guys that, but I've got a whole bunch of choices here. I got to choose a skill card. Here we have all the level 3 cards. The only ones I can actually pick right now would be Tailored Swiftness 2 because I have Tailored Swiftness 1, which you can just see over here. If I do this, when you gain it, you get these 2 tokens. The green one states that you are going to draw a token from the bag, which is going to provide you with an additional action on top of it. Now, the actual specific text on that token states, draw 1 token after this action. So you do the action, and then you draw a token, providing you with another action, as I mentioned. This one here gives you an orange die, which is awesome to see. And what's even cooler about this card is on the bottom portion, it says, remove any 2 tokens, other tokens. So you're going to go into either your discarded pool of tokens that you've already used and are sitting out in the open, or you're going to go into your rogue bag and make sure you don't mix these while you're looking through either one of those piles, and you can remove 2 that you don't like seeing that often. So that card's really cool that way. These ones here really focus on whether you're trying to, well, first you have to have Shadow 1 or Deadly 1, but these basically are all around either creating shadow zones in light spaces and then getting more benefits from the shadow, or Deadly Mixture allows you to start poisoning enemies, which can be really helpful too. This card over here, a level 2, allows you at the start of your turn to rotate the card to exhaust it, place back the tokens you drew, and draw 3 new tokens. So it gives you that ability to look at the tokens you got, go, don't like them, basically tap the card to redraw, which is pretty awesome. I decided to go with the Tailored Swiftness. This is the level 2, so these are the 2 tokens I'm gaining right now. They immediately go into my rogue bag. The 2 that I took out ended up coming from this pile here. Again, remember, you can still take tokens out of the bag if you select tokens from the bag. Just don't mix things, otherwise it gets confusing. So these ones are discarded away. These 2 are going into the bag, and that is going to have them come around in the near future, which is exciting to know. The darkness is now going to move along the track, and as you can see, we're going to be spawning a mob in the 1 portal that we have, the purple one up top. This time though, we're grabbing from the level 3 to 4 mobs because we now have Faye at level 3. Don't forget, once your heroes go up to that next level tier, you start grabbing from the higher tier mob cards, and that also includes the item level cards that the mob gets underneath as well. So orange now. The mob that we have coming in is a mob of skeletons with a rare treasure attached to them and a higher level mob item. This is a fire chain. So we have fire chain wielding skeletons coming at us, 3 health and some pretty crazy defensive abilities too. The northern section of the dungeon got really busy really quickly. I'm going to activate Phaedra this time around. We got these 3 tokens, which are actually really good because I want to make some serious movement towards that roaming monster. All right, I'm not sure how this is going to work out, but I'm going to get the rogue right in there with the roaming monster, trying to do as much damage as possible here. So we're going to go ahead and use, I think, this +2 movement as part of a movement action. So 4 movement points, really just to get Faye within attacking distance, which will be right here. Faye's going to go into this attack with a yellow die, and of course, because it's an attack, I'm going to choose for my second action here to use this token right here for some extra rerolls, which will be nice. So 1 for the longbow here. We're going to use 1 mana to get 2 swords right off the hop, so that's definitely going to be a plus. I'll just go ahead and place that there so I don't forget to get the 2 swords. And do we have anything additional? The Shadow Zone, of course, so we get the purple die as well. Now this roaming monster gets 2 blue dice and a black die for defense, so quite a bit going on there. We have some rerolls to kind of mitigate things. We have 2 swords because of the spend on the heavy gauntlets, got to remember that. Here we go. We're going to see what Faye is able to put together here. This should be quite interesting. All right, so we got a blue here of nothing. We got 1 shield, 2 mana, a sword, and a mana. Okay, actually, that's not a terrible roll. It's kind of bad on the attack side of things, but I'd like to boost this a little bit more, and I don't really need that much mana. Although it's good to have the 1 for the next attack. I'm going to probably re-roll this one first, and then we'll see where we go from there. Hopefully this will come back with some more swords. Oh, no, so I kind of want to re-roll that again. Come on, give me more swords. Oh, no. Okay, so we got ourselves 1 sword, which gets blocked out by the defense. We also have 2 swords coming in from the heavy gauntlets, so at least we get 2 damage through, bringing it up to a total of 6 damage. The good news is we do gain 2 mana from this, so we get to place that into our pool, which is nice. And that's going to do it for resolving that first attack. I still have 1 more token to spend. Final action for the rogue is going to be another attack. We can use the green one with any kind of action. This is a draw 1 token after this action is completed. We're using that for sure to get us an additional action. Maybe we'll get enough to do another attack. So we have the yellow die here for the longbow, purple for shadow. I'm going to use 1 mana here to get +2 swords, and I have another mana here I could use for a combat reroll, which would give me an extra reroll on the side, which would be probably beneficial. All right, let's see how this roll goes. We know we have 1 reroll this time around, and we are definitely going to be able to pull another token from the bag, giving us an additional action at the end. Hoping for good things here. What do we got? Oh my gosh, I'm not getting the rolls I want. So this claw here, is there anything on defense? No, oh, it does say combat. So it says move the closest mob 1 zone toward the ghoul. So the fire entities are going to shamble their way down, and I'm okay with it, to be completely honest. They're still far enough away that I'm not too worried. I'm not going to choose to re-roll that die anyway. Now with the rest of the dice, I have 1 more re-roll. So the question is, do I want to go ahead and spend the mana for that re-roll? I do technically have 1 sword here, 2 extra swords for the heavy gauntlets. 1 of these swords is blocked, so really I have 2 attack going through, which would bring up to 8 total health hits. We need 2 more, so I probably should try to reroll this purple die and hope that I land some swords. If we get 2 swords, we kill the ghoul. Let's see how we go. No, we got the shadow token. What does this do? This says draw rogue tokens. So this is actually going to allow us to draw 2 rogue tokens now. That was pretty wild. So we have the shadow ability triggering. We also have the green token, both of them allowing me after that attack to now go ahead and pull 2 more tokens from the bag. And the 2 tokens we have gotten literally are the 2 that we just upgraded from, which is pretty awesome. We got the orange die and another one that allows me to draw another token with an action. So this rogue really wants to kill this thing. So we've got those 2 in the fray. It's also worth mentioning we have no more mana because I used the 1 on the heavy gauntlets in the last attack and 1 to do the combat reroll. We currently have 8 damage on the ghoul, and we definitely have the ability to try to take this thing down. So what we're going to hold on to this for a second. We're going to use this one right now. So we're going to build our die pool again for another attack. So we're going to have an orange die coming in the fray. So we'll have a yellow for the longbow, orange for this token, a purple die, and then of course all of the enemy dice in the fray as well. The rogue is really pushing hard to kill this thing off. Let's see if we can make it happen this time around. All right, more defense, but a lot more swords from me this time around. I think that might be enough. Oh yeah, that's way more than enough. We don't even need, we don't have any rerolls to use, but we are going to gain 1 mana back, so I'll do that right now. Nothing on the black die. That's great to see. So these 2 block each other out. The 3 there is going to be basically pushing this thing up to 11 damage. That ghoul is dead. Now, as you can see right on the ghoul card here, it is going to provide a rare fixed treasure plus the 2 of these common treasures. Let's go ahead and pull the cards for those. So Faye has gained poison arrows. When doing ranged attacks, deal 1 wound to the defender. That's awesome. Kind of a nice additional wound that just goes right through, making longbow attacks from range that I've currently got equipped pretty powerful. The double axe here is an orange with an attack reroll. That's pretty nice, a double-handed weapon, but probably not exactly what I want to use on the rogue per se. The focus potion gives me 2 combat rerolls when I consume it. That could be useful. Now, even though those poison arrows sound really good, I still love these heavy gauntlets in terms of giving me a +2 sword boost right at the gates when I pay 1 mana. So I'm going to stick with that. Everything else is basically what I just obtained. Everything went into my pile of inventory except for the focus potion, which I've got up here for consumables. I've got my health potion still, my ability to move 2 zones immediately. Still have a combat rerolls for the future. I still am literally taking actions with the rogue because of the way their tokens are coming out of the bag, thanks to my tailored swiftness abilities. Pushing these tokens into the bag have really ramped up how many actions Faye can pull off on a given turn, which is pretty crazy. Now at this point I gain 1 XP for killing off the monster, and I'm going to gain 4 more XP for killing off a roaming monster, and 4 of that XP also is going to go to Mathrin. Just like leaders that provide 2 XP for both heroes, roaming monsters provide 4 XP for both heroes. This is great for Mathrin because it bumps him from 6 up to 10, which is the level he needs to be at in order to go to the next level, level 3, which is going to be a nice boost for him. Now here's what's pretty crazy. I'm going to go over to the right-hand side of the board as quickly as possible with Faye because she is becoming a powerhouse. I'm going to choose to do a movement of 2, and then after we do the movement of 2, I'm going to draw 1 token after the action. So Faye runs all the way to that location there, reaching in the bag. There's not many tokens left in here anyway. The one I pulled out is a yellow token for a combat. Now this is interesting. I could potentially target enemies to the north of me when I make my final action here, which is obscene how many I've been able to pull off in this turn. But the other option I have at my disposal is that I am 1 space away from a trap. So I could use my toolkit, which is what I kind of purposely set myself up in terms of movement there, to be 1 space away. I could, as an action, just walk into that trap space, get rid of that bear trap for free. And I guess it didn't matter much because it ended up being nothing in the end anyway, but at least it's cleared out of the way. So that, my friends, is a perfect example of how powerful the rogue can be depending on the tokens coming out of the bag. Now, they don't always line up with what you want to do, but that's an example of where things did line up the way I wanted them to without knowing, because you have no idea what's coming out of the bag and what's coming next. But getting 2 of those green tokens allowing me to draw more tokens from the bag, and then also landing that shadow icon allowing me to draw a rogue token from the bag, gave me 3 additional actions on top of the 3 that I normally get for a total of 6, which is a ton of ability or movement or attacking to be able to pull off inside of a single turn. The rogue turn is over. We're going to go ahead and activate Mathrin, who is going to use movement points to go 2 out the door and head towards that fountain. As much as he'd like to interact with the fountain, he doesn't have any need to hope for healing here. He's only got a maximum right now of 5 health. So just doing this to hope to gain just 1 health is not really the best utilization of this fountain because there is some good healing that could potentially come of it. And we might need it later on. For now, we'll leave it alone. We're going to take the second action here to head to the door for the chamber to the south. Now this is where I need to make a decision in terms of whether or not I want to, with my final action for my heroes, crack a door at the very end of their activation, knowing that a mob is inside. And of course, Mathrin probably not being able to take down this mob right away kind of makes me a tad worried to crack the door. There might be something else I can do instead. What I'm going to do is use the action right on Mathrin's card here to gain 3 more mana, bringing him up to his maximum of 6, which is great. This will give him a lot of flexibility with the spell amulet, depending on what kind of problems he's about to run into in the future. His turn is now done, and we are going to go ahead and head into the enemy phase, activating the mobs in play. There's currently only 2, so these are both going to shuffle forward towards our heroes 2 spaces each. And that's mainly because of the fact that our heroes are perfectly positioned to not be targets of any kind of attack, whether it be from range or a magic attack. So the enemies were just shambling into position here, which is great for us. Leveling up wise, this time around, Mathrin is the one that gets to go to the next level, spending 10 XP, dropping down to 0 now to go up to that next level, bumping up his overall health by 1 as well as his mana. And then 1 of the epic treasure tokens for Mathrin is going to go in the treasure bag. So we see a bump up in the health for Mathrin as well as the mana for Mathrin. Now we get to pick a skill. Now for the wizard, out of the level 3s that I just unlocked, the only 2 that I have available to me based on the spells that I currently have in my amulet would be Dark Magic 2 and Fire Course 2. And honestly, Dark Magic 2 is really tempting. For 1 mana, you take 2 wounds and you deal 3 wounds to any 2 different enemies in the dungeon. That can be pretty substantial in thinning out mobs as they're coming towards you, even when they're nowhere near you. Very, very powerful stuff. You've also got the Frost Armor boat you can start getting on, which allows for a very different condition token than the fire one that you saw. It's more about defense. It's more about buffing up your defensive dice. You put this token on top of armor, and then you use it to buff your defense. The problem is, it then will be moved to the attacker, taking the token and going forward with it. So that's something that could be a benefit in the future for defense, but honestly, that dark magic, it's so tempting. And in the end, it was too tempting indeed. Going to the dark side here with the Dark Magic 2 will certainly be handy, especially if more roaming monsters appear. Might be able to take some wounds in order to start doling out some pretty big damage. Now that my hero, Mathrin, is starting to level up in the health department a little bit better. We now move to the darkness phase, and in this case, we're just going to be adding an epic treasure token to the treasure bag, so things are cool and quiet for the moment. I'm going to have Mathrin activate first this time around, see what kind of pain and punishment he can put on these fire entities. Mathrin now is going to show a little bit of power here. He's going to use his wooden staff with a magic attack, so 1 yellow die. He'll gain a mana at the very end of the attack. He's going to spend a mana on steel gauntlets to get a yellow die, so 1 additional yellow die. He's going to get a shadow die for being in a shadow space, and because he's in a shadow space, he's going to get +1 sword. He's then going to use 1 mana on his spell amulet as part of his spell attack to add another sword, so we have 2 swords going into the fray right from the beginning, plus all of these dice. Now, in terms of what these fire entities can do in combat, if they get 1 hand symbol, or for every hand symbol they get, they add 1 fire token to the attacking or defending hero. So the hero, poor Mathrin here, if they get a bunch of hand symbols, will be throwing fire on us, of course, being that they're fire entities. So we're going to try to avoid that. Now, looking for rerolls here, I have the ability, if I wanted to spend a mana during this attack, I can use my kilt to give me 2 rerolls. So if I want to reroll my way out of some of those nasty effects, we'll see how that goes. All right, so that was a pretty shallow roll. Wow, that was really bad. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and spend a mana to do some rerolls here because that might be a window for us to do some better attacks. I'm going to probably reroll this purple die here, hoping for more swords because we didn't get any shields. I'm going to probably reroll this. Actually, I don't mind taking the 1 wound hit. That's okay. I think I'll re-roll this and this. So let's re-roll the purple one first and just see how it goes. 1 sword. It's so bad. Okay, let's go ahead and roll the yellow die next. Okay, a sword and a mana. That's actually not bad. We got some mana back. So 2, and then we have, remember, 2 swords from the attack amulet, which was a +1, and then we had a +1 from the Thieves' Hood. So really we have a total of 4 swords, and taking a look at the fire entities, you need 3 to kill 1 of them. So 1 of them is dead, and we placed 1 additional damage on the next one. All right, so the amulet has rotated as we use this one here. We're going to gain 1 mana here and then 1 mana off the yellow die up top. So that's 2 more mana coming back to us after that attack. And we also have to take a wound for the black die hit, and that should have happened way earlier when we were resolving the dice, because you always resolve those black dice first. And beyond that, I think that is going to do it. Actually, no, there's one more thing. We need to gain 1 XP for killing off the actual minion itself that we did. So there we go. We're all squared away now. That was the very first action for Mathrin, so he is going to go ahead and set himself up for another attack. So going into the next attack here, I'm not going to worry about the spell amulet this time around, though I do have plans to use dark magic maybe a little bit later on. For right now, wooden staff with the yellow die. We're going to spend a mana to gain another yellow die here. We've got the purple die for the shadow, and the enemy now, instead of having 2 black dice, only has 1 because one of the minions is dead. So we're going to go ahead and roll from here. Of course, I have mana if I need to spend in order to reroll from this right here, the kilt, which will certainly come in handy. Let's go ahead and see whether Mathrin can pull off this attack successfully, getting a bunch of damage through, I hope. We got ourselves, ooh, that's a nasty one there. We got 2, we got the shadow ability, we got a block of a shield. So really, I'm going to spend a mana to do some rerolling. We're going to reroll the black die here. Get that out of here, that's a blank. We're going to reroll maybe this one here as well. That's a blank. Awesome. So now our 2 gets through. The shadow icon says use any attack spell on the amulet for free. Do not rotate the marker. So I'm going to choose to use the attack spell that gives me +2 swords, and the defender takes a fire damage. This is really, really good. So we'll put the fire damage on. What do we have for total number of hits going into this? Well, we are going to have 2 off of the Fire Course 1 that was just triggered for free and no rotation of the spell amulet, plus the 2 here is 4. That on top of the 1 I already have is 5, so that's easily enough to kill off the minion and be 1 away from killing off the leader with that 1 fire condition token on it. Never mind, correction, I have the Thieves' Hood, and because I'm sitting in a shadow space, that's 1 sword right there. So I have the Thieves' Hood 1 sword, I have 2 swords right here, which is 3, and then I have 2 swords coming from the Fire Course that I just triggered. That's 5, with 1 damage already on the fire entity. That's a total of 6, so that's going to kill the entire mob before the fire condition even has a chance to trigger. Well, a lot of exciting things are happening right now. First off, I'm going to gain some mana back here for the wooden staff for using on my second attack, so that's good news. I get 1 and then 2 mana more, so I went from 1 to 3 for killing those 2 fire entities, but then because one of them's a leader, I get an additional 2, jumping me up to 5. Faye is going to jump up off screen here from 5 to 7. The fire entities dropped their weapon, the Undead Sword, which Matherin gets to hold on to, and the rare treasure that came along with it is a Commander Shield. A defense here, you may use 1 shield to block 1 of those guaranteed wounds. Wow, that is a powerful shield, being able to block something that is typically going straight through as a damage, but just has 1 for defense, but that is pretty good. Now here's the kicker with the wizard in terms of how you build the wizard. Remember, you're only able to use attack spells on the amulet if they relate to a magical weapon that you're using. So as much as I want to put this commander shield that's one-handed right here, then it wouldn't allow me to use the wooden staff, which is dual-handed, so I'd have to switch it out for some other weapon, and I don't have any other magic weapons that are one-handed currently. We know that Faye has one, but I haven't been able to trade with Faye yet. So if I chose any other weapon, what happens immediately then is all of the attack spells on the amulet can no longer be used to boost any kind of attack, because they need to be magic based attacks to be able to use these 2 right here. So that's really important to note. The only way to get around this is to choose a skill when you're building out your wizard called Battle Wizard. If you use Battle Wizard as a skill at level 1 right here, you're going to see that it says as long as this skill is on the Spill Amulet, you can use melee weapons as magical weapons at range 0 with a +1 yellow die. You need that skill to be able to use a regular melee weapon as if it was a magical item to then take advantage of these types of attacks. So long story short, I still like the ability to use these attack spells, so because of it, I'm keeping the wooden staff in place, and unfortunately the Commander Shield will go to the inventory. I still have an action to use with Matherin left, but I'm going to go ahead and choose to use the Spell Amulet right now to spend 2 mana in order to heal, and that's going to allow me to bump myself up to full health. So I normally have 4 plus my 2 for max, which would be 6, so I get 2 more health, bumping me up to a total of full health, which I really want to be able to use that dark magic to my advantage, which I might be able to pull off right now. So when we spin this amulet for using that, we're now pointed towards the dark magic. I'm going to go ahead and spend 1 mana in order to take 2 wounds, which I just healed. Took 2 wounds, which I just healed off. You might be wondering, well, wait a minute, shouldn't you have 7? Well, 6 is my max, so I don't get to take full advantage of that 3 heal. But this is going to allow me to deal 3 wounds to any 2 different enemies in the dungeon. As of right now, it's only going to be the skeletons, and guess what? The skeletons each have a health of 3, so one of the minions is dying. So Matherin just pulled a Gandalf and pulled out some kind of dark. So Matherin just used some serious dark magic nowhere near the skeletons in order to snuff one of them out. By doing so, he's able to gain an additional XP for killing it off, going from 5 to 6. The spell amulet rotates again. Now it's pointing south towards the attack spell, which is great for later on when something nasty comes. I still have an action left. So what I'm probably going to do is, again, not open up the door to the south of me and have another mob come out and destroy me. Instead, I'm going to spend that last action to gain 3 mana to prepare for the future. So just to visually show you here, 5 to 6, the amulet is now pointing down to fire course because we just did the dark magic. I'm choosing to do the action gain 3 mana, so we'll put 3 mana right here. That is going to be Matherin's turn. We flip over the activation marker and stop right there. The rogue only has 1 MP token left in the rogue bag, so everything that's been discarded is going to be placed back inside the bag. They'll be all shuffled up. I'm going to pull 2 more from the bag blindly. We'll see what we get. We got ourselves, oh, one of those green ones. Those are always good. That allows me some additional actions. Let's see what we get for the next one. A yellow die. I think it's time to make a push for that second shard in this chamber on the right-hand side, which appears to be guarded by an evil entity underneath some great breathing heavily. We need to get to that door, so let's go ahead and choose an action and use a token. I've gone ahead and done my action, which is to move 2, which was moving 1 space and then cracking the door open. It says after I do the action, then I'm going to go ahead and draw another token. So I'll go ahead and draw the token now so I know what it is. Let's go into the bag and find out. And then we're going to go ahead and resolve all the door fun that comes from that chamber. Oh my gosh, I got another green one. That is amazing. I'm going to be able to continue into this chamber even further. This was a timely card to get, seeing as we killed off the only roaming monster in the dungeon, because it says Dark Force Room. If there is any roaming monster in the dungeon, choose one and replace its card from 1 tier higher. If possible, keep all tokens it had. So basically, you take the tier level that you're at and you would look at the tier higher and replace it, keeping every single token that's currently on it, which would obviously bump its health up and change all of its abilities, potentially even impact its dice. So that's a really good one to get right now when there's no roaming monster. We're resolving the mob token now, and you can see the mob is going to be some infernal imps. They come in with 1 treasure token, which ended up being an epic treasure. This will be the first time we're able to get some epic treasure in the game. They're also holding a tainted sword on top of it. The treasure token in the room ended up being a common treasure too. Second action for Faye is definitely going to be an attack. We're going to go ahead with the longbow, which is 1 yellow die. I have 1 free reroll with it. I'm in a shadow zone, so I get this die. I'm placing this token, using this token, I should say, from my pool as part of this action, giving me an additional yellow die. I'm also spending the only mana that I have to gain 2 swords. Well, here goes. Let's see how this pans out. We're going to be rolling these dice. I do have the 1 free reroll, and do I have any more ability to reroll anything after this? Not really, nope, because my mana is capped at this point. Oh, I actually do have rerolls from my focus potion. If I wanted to consume that, that would give me 2 more rerolls, so could potentially use that. Let's see what we get here. Oh, that's going to be bad for me. Oh my gosh, what a great roll by this mob. This is going to be dangerous. Okay, now taking a look at the Infernal Imps on the defense, yikes, they have an ability on their card off screen there. It says whenever they get one of the hand symbols, they're going to kill one of the imps, then deal 2 wounds to each hero in the attacker's zone once per roll. Ouch. Well, I guess instead of focusing on the 2 shields, I really need to focus on re-rolling those black dice. So let's go ahead, use the free reroll I have on this one here is the most nasty of the 2. And now it's just, oh geez, it's still a hand. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead now and use and consume this focus potion here, which we've had for a bit, and we're going to use it in order to get 2 more rerolls. So we're gonna be rerolling and trying to get rid of these hand symbols as best we can. Oh, there it is back again. Come on, get rid of at least one of them. Okay, well, I guess that was kind of a poor roll when I think about it, because actually I'll do that again, because I just remembered the way that the ability is worded. It says, then deal 2 wounds to each hero in the attacker's zone once per roll. So that's interesting. It kind of almost seems like it can only happen once, if I'm reading that correctly. So it doesn't matter how many hand symbols are. Normally these can trigger multiple times, but this actual ability says only once per roll. So in that case, it would make no sense to reroll these hands, because once they have 1, they're going to trigger this ability regardless. It would make more sense to reroll that last one to be this, to get rid of the defense, to try to get some of the swords through. So I'll go that route. We'll see how this goes. Okay, that gets rid of the defense. So we are going to kill off an imp, and that is going to deal 2 wounds to Phaedra. My understanding around this is that because the ability on the mob kills the imp is essentially imploding, so I'm not getting any credit for killing it, so I shouldn't get the XP. That's my understanding, but I am getting the wounds from the imp dying. So that is going to knock me from 6 down to 4, which you can see on screen here. And these infernal imps are really strong, so I'm really glad I used the heavy gauntlets to get the 2 swords from them, because the 2 swords on top of the 3 I have here is 5, which means with them being at a level of 4 each, one of those individuals, of course, is killed off because, well, the ability triggered its death, but now there's only 2 left. I put 5 wounds against it, killing the next minion out of the equation, and then putting 1 damage towards the leader. Now for that kill, the second minion, the one I actually put swords against, I do gain the XP, so I'm jumping from 7 to 8 for that one, plus I get 2 mana off the dice. This time around, for the third action, I'm going to use this token in conjunction with what I'm doing, so I get to draw another token after I complete this attack action. Attack action from a shadow zone from range with a longbow. I get the purple die, yellow die. I do get a free reroll using a mana of the 2 that I gained from the prior attack. One of them spent to get 2 swords. The dice pool for the enemies has been thinned out immensely, so that's really good. We're going to go ahead and roll these off, see how we do. And the defensive roll was just 1 single shield. Now I do have a free reroll here, so I want to think about this. I've got 2 guaranteed swords plus the sword there. So what I probably want to do is I probably want to re-roll the shadow die. It has the best chance of helping me out, I think. So we're going to go with that and hope that we land some swords here. Yep, 3 swords. That is well enough beyond what we need. So we are going to gain back a mana, so I'll grab that right now. That leader is now dead. We're going to be gaining some XP and grabbing a bunch of loot, and one of the loot is going to be an epic one. So 1 XP for killing off the leader miniature, and then 2 because it is a leader. So it's going to go up to 11 total. So we'll go ahead and update that on Faye. She needs to get up to 12 XP to go to level 4. The next thing we need to do is we're going to flip over this drawing of a token because we used this one as part of the last attack, allowing us to go in the row bag and draw a token. We're then going to deal with all the loot from the imps that we just killed too. The token we got is another movement. Mathrin also gets the benefit of jumping up by 2 for the leader being dead from 6 to 8. And you can see 2 loot cards from what we killed with the imps. Check out the armor on the left-hand side. We have the Shadowbane set. This is the first time any one hero equips this item. They gain a new skill of their level or lower. That is pretty cool. That is part of that Shadowbane set as part of the core set, the epic gear that you can accumulate over time. And remember, there are specific reference cards based on having 2 or more or 4 or more of these pieces of armor, I believe, in terms of how many you have. So you get abilities beyond this even, which is pretty crazy the more you collect of a particular set. This Tainted Sword here is a one-handed attack. Defender gets -1 shield, and you get an orange die. I think this is the right time for Faye to finally upgrade the longbow to a Tainted Sword and the current armor that she has to something even better. Just like that, we are all set with Faye. We still have the ability to take 2 more actions based on the 2 tokens we still have available. The first action is obviously going to be some movement. We're going to head in there, and I might interact with the forge first. And Faye has the ability to do this because of the additional movement point that I'm using during this action. So 2 to get in, 1 to use the forge. I'm going to take the 3 rare items, and believe me, I was thinking about keeping this armor over for the wizard, but I'm just too greedy with Phaedra. I want to see what epic weapon we're going to forge from these 3 rares. Faye ended up forging some spiked boots. This is an epic item that says combat 1 mana, deal 1 wound to the attacker or defender. The current loadout for Faye has these leprechaun slippers, which are quite good. I haven't made use of stealing the weapon away from the mob very much yet, but that is something that I could have taken advantage of. To be honest, the spiked boots sound way cooler. So Faye just continues to get more and more powerful. But we do have a mission, and that is to get some shards. So for the last action here, we'll use this 1 MP, which is a bit more than what we actually even need. So basically 1 movement point to get into this space here with the objective token. We're going to take the objective token. We're going to gain 5 XP, jumping Faye from 11 up to 16. And then we're going to move 1 additional space afterwards. And that's going to do it for the rogue turn, and that's going to wrap up both of the heroes' turns. The hero phase is over. The only enemies in the dungeon currently are the skeletons. They're going to shamble forward 2 spaces. Next, we're going to move to the level up phase. Phaedra is now moving up to level 4, and this is going to be a big bump for her. So this is going to drop her total XP by 12, so she's going to go down by 2 to 4, or I should say from 6 to 4, and then down by 10. That will pay for her allotment of 12, and then she's going to gain 2 more health to her maximum, 1 more mana. She'll gain both of those up top right now as well, and an epic treasure token going into the treasure bag. So something I need to correct right now is the fact that the second I equipped that crazy Shadowbane armor set that I got, it said I could take a new skill. I should have done that right away. I've decided to go ahead and get the toolkit 2 for that. Now we get to decide what other skill we're going to get as part of this level up. For the level up, I decided to take Rehearse Tricks because this will allow me to redraw the initial 3 tokens from the bag if I don't like what I get. The level up phase is complete. The darkness phase is going to have us move down the track, and we have mob spawning. The new mob spawning is going to be fallen angels. They're coming in with a devil's crossbow. The fallen angels have arrived on scene in the northern spawn zone, which is up where the final shard is located. So we're going to have to go through the thick of things to get into there. Once we get into that final chamber in the back, there's also a mob awaiting us in there as well. At this point, we are halfway through the objectives we need to complete to win this scenario. We've got 2 of the shards. We need the last shard, which is way up in the north chamber, and then we need to head to this southern chamber down here, go through a mob, and then get to the forge in order to make the demon artifact. If we can pull that off in the next video, then we complete the mission. If we, of course, die trying, and we can afford to die once because we do have 1 Lightbringer token left, so one of us can drop to our knees out of the 2 characters and come back, but then that second death will take us out for good. So if you'll join me in the next episode, we'll wrap things up and see whether or not it's possible to pull off forging the demon artifact. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you think we should do next. I think it's pretty obvious we need to head north, as it's the main objective we have to do in order to get down to that forge. So just let me know if you're enjoying the playthrough to this point, if it's helping you learn the game and get the game to the table. I'm having a lot of fun with this one, and it's a much, much better version of the original game, which landed years ago. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, keep on rolling solo.